All right, welcome back to the SciMax channel. Hopefully today I'll show you some of the DOI and BibTeX utilities that are built into OrGraph that help the other side of our jobs go a little bit more smoothly. So far the last, I don't know, six videos or so, I've showed you that if you have a database of bibliography entries, it's easy to enter them as citations. So here I have one over here on the right, and it's pretty simple. Over here we just type control bracket or whatever you have it bound to, and it's easy to insert with completion. What I haven't talked about so far is where do I get these BibTeX entries, and how do I use them, how do I maintain them, navigate them, etc. And that's what I'll show you a little bit about today, I hope. So I'm going to set this library path for PDFs just for the demo to show you a little bit of what happens. You can see over here, this is the bottom right is empty. There's nothing in there at the moment, but we'll see hopefully that changes shortly. All right, so the main way that I get BibTeX entries is from a DOI. And DOIs are really nice. They are unique URLs, or they can be made into a URL like this one. And if you click on this, it will open and go directly to a journal page. Now you can often find BibTeX entries somewhere on here that you could copy and paste, but that's not what I normally do. So what I normally do is I can highlight or copy a DOI, and then I run this DOI add BibTeX entry command. And this is this will confirm down here in the mini buffer that's what I want. It will ask me where do I want to put the entry, so I'm going to pick the demo file. And what we should see is over on the right, it should appear over here. And let's see, did that happen? Did it put it in the middle somehow? That's really weird. This happened like a minute ago, but then it didn't happen. Okay, so there it put it in the right place. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was some weird visual artifact. And then down here you can see that we now have a PDF that's been added to it. And so it was able to automatically download the PDF from this article journal page. Now that will only happen for you if you happen to have permission to get the PDF, and most of that is done by IP address. So right now I'm running a VPN that gives me the permission to download and access the PDFs. So most of the time I normally use this DOI method because it's totally unambiguous. There is only one article with this DOI, and it goes out to doi.org. Gets the detailed information, and then there's a bunch of recipes that it can figure out how to get the PDF in many cases. So it can't get all PDFs because I don't have all the recipes, and I also don't always have permission to get them. Now another common way that I am able to get BibTeX entries is by using crossref. So crossref is a web service that you can go to and put in a query string like this. And this might be something you see at the end of journals that don't include a DOI or some other link to the article. So here we just highlight this and run crossref add BibTeX entry, and it will prompt me for this query, and then it'll ask me where to put it, and then it will do this crossref search. Now this takes a little bit of time because it's sending information out to the internet, and then it's coming back with a bunch of hits. And the first hit is usually what I want. So I usually just press enter, and then you see over here that it has added that BibTeX entry the way we want. And let's see, it also was able to get the PDF for that journal. All right, and then here is a nice tool for archive. Let's say you want this article here. You can export this, let's see what happens, and then copy this if you want. But it turns out that you can just highlight and copy this, and over here, MetaX archive, add BibTeX entry, and it will extract the number from it. And then again, ask you where you want to put it. And now over here we have the BibTeX entry in this place. And here you can see we were able to get the PDF from that. So now if I come over here, now we have several things to choose from, and each one of them has a PDF that we could choose. Okay, so those are the main ways that I get BibTeX entries. You can, of course, enter them manually if you want. It's just fairly tedious, and this is the way I most often do it. And maybe it's worth noting here that whenever you do this, it copies the key to the clipboard so that you can just paste it in. So it's pretty common that I would be adding a BibTeX entry and then say here, want to directly add it on. And that's a somewhat clunky way to do it, but it's pretty convenient if you need to do it that way. Okay, so once you have all these BibTeX entries, it's not uncommon that you need to go into the BibTeX entry, into your BibTeX file, and do stuff with it. So there is a lot of things we can do. I'll show you this BibTeX hydra. So I have this bound to hyper B. You would bind it to something you find convenient, and you get this big menu of things that you can do. So let's look at the navigation. It looks like we can do navigation back and forth. That's pretty convenient. The arrows work. Let's say I want to jump to a visible field in here. I would type capital V, and this gives me an AV selector, so I could, to get to this one, just press G. And you notice this has a nil in it. That nil means that I downloaded this back in 2018, and it hasn't been updated since that time. And so this probably was an ASAP article that didn't have a number or volume, and now I want to update it. So the best thing is to look down here and look at the U option. Lowercase u will automatically update this, and it goes out to the DOI website, gets the new information, and updates it for you automatically. You can also do capital U. This will update the whole entry. That one is maybe can do things that aren't intended, like change the key. So I usually am pretty careful with that. Let's see, what else can we do? We can change the title, the case of the title. So here you see this one is in title case, every word is capitalized. If you have a journal that requires sentence case, we just press capital S and it automatically changes this one. So if you end up needing to do things like that, there's other things that I'll show you in a minute. Of course, we can press P, that will open the PDF and get us right to that. And let's see what else is interesting. If I wanted to email this to somebody, I just press E and it copies the entry and attaches the PDF in a nice way. And let's see, there's other things. We can add a PDF. So if you had to manually download the PDF, you would type, let's see, A here, and then you would navigate to it. I don't know, let's see, I don't know what this will do. That one already exists, so I'll have to look into, remember exactly how that one works. I usually don't add them. And then there's various things we could do to search in here. So let's say I want to find articles citing this one. Then I just press C. And this also requires you to have a access to Web of Science, for example. And here I get to a web page that shows 103 articles have cited the one that my cursor was just on. All right, so that allows me to navigate, to edit. Again, let's look at them. We can get to our notes or the browser. We can sort the fields if you like them in a different order. Add keywords. How about let's add some keywords. Single atom alloy. That automatically inserts this field called keywords. And maybe I want to copy a formatted entry. Then I would just press little f and then I could paste it somewhere. But let's also look at these other ones. So if I do capital F, then I get a new hydra for BibTeX file functions. So one of them I might do is validate the entries, or let's just count the entries. It tells me there's 4, and it looks like I could type P, and that will generate a PDF of the whole bibliography. So if you have a very big bibliography, you might choose to do that wisely. But here we have now every entry in there. That's pretty nice. And then one final way of adding new entries is to go to the new entry hydra, and this will give you all of the different ways you can do it automatically from a DOI or crossref or archive or biblio if you want. And then we can manually put in, let's say, for miscellaneous, and it will give me the template, and you have to fill in all of the details. So let's say JK, new book, and then Control C, Control C. I see we're missing a year. Let's put that in, 2021. And then it prompts me for a key to use based on some rules, and I press enter, and that's it. That's how I get a manually entered entry. Okay, so I'm sure I missed a couple of things. Maybe the final thing that I'll talk about is, let's say you want to change all of the entries. Most of the functions that I talked about, like sentence case or title case, can be used with BibTeX map entries, and that will go through every entry and apply this sentence case to the articles. So if I look here, what we do, this is a typical way I would do this, is like use find file, no select to open the file and not add it to my list of recent files. And then we run BibTeX map entries with a function. In this case, we'll sentence case it, and then afterwards we will save the buffer. So just note in here, the first one is sentence cased, the second one is title cased, this one is title cased, and when I run this, then this one is now, these are all sentence cased. It's kind of hard to see, so let's change it back to title case. Right, so you can see the capitalization of all of these changes. I don't do this one super often either, and if you're going to do something where you map over all your entries, you should certainly keep your bibliography under some kind of version control in case it does something that you didn't want. That's just good practice. And since it's a text file, it's really easy to keep it in Git or some other version control, or the old-fashioned way, just make a backup copy of it just in case and get rid of it when you know you don't need it anymore. That's not super reliable, but it's certainly better than not doing it. Of course, this is Emacs, so we can undo kind of anything that you want as long as you don't close the buffer. Once you close things and it's gone, then the undo history is unavailable. All right, so that is the last major piece of orgref that needs to be, that you should know about if you're using it. There are other tools like Biblio and other Emacs packages, but I find the DOI utils pretty good. And maybe let's find library DOI utils and just have a quick look at how things work. So the way we get PDFs from a DOI, it's a tiny bit complicated. What we do is go out to doi.org, and there we get information about the article. Then there's a redirect that goes back to the publisher page. And so there's a couple of functions that are designed to get a redirect URL to get to the DOI page. And once we do that, we have a bunch of functions in this variable, PDF URL functions, that are responsible for taking the URL redirect and calculating a PDF URL. So this one is the APS journal. So if you have a URL that starts with APS journals.aps.org, then there's a simple formula here to just replace abstract with PDF, and that will give you a URL to the PDF that you can use to download. Most of them are simple like that. Like science, it looks like you just add .full PDF. Sometimes we add .pdf. Sometimes it's more complicated. We have to replace, this with this, or something like this. And sometimes you see there's more than one recipe, and that's either because the recipes have changed, so publishers don't really like you automatically downloading PDFs, especially in bulk, so they frequently change. And when they change, this breaks. So for example, this is a note from 2016, then another note from 2019, and you can see there are like 3 versions here. So it's kind of a rolling game of keeping up with the publishers. This one, here's one that is like more complicated than usual. Most of these are really just simple replacements of one URL to another. Science Direct tries to hide the PDF in the HTML. So here we get the HTML and then search for it. That's not very beautiful, but that's what you do when you want a PDF and you don't want too many clicks to get there. And then somebody gave me the Copernicus publications. So there's a bunch of these that all use the same pattern down here. IEEE looks like it must hide stuff inside of the HTML, and so this is again not beautiful parsing of HTML. It's just parsing that actually works. At least it did work at one time. But you can see there are also several versions of this. You have like Optical Society, ASME. This one is also like typical text where we might, search for this pattern and try to get out that URL. This also just uses a regular expression. Probably I wrote a lot of these all at once and got good at it and just used the same tool. Okay, then we have this really long list of the URL functions, and we just map over them until one of them returns an actual URL. So each function returns nil if it doesn't find it or if it's not relevant, and gives you a URL if it does, and the first URL we find is the one that gets downloaded. Now, in theory, these are now being done asynchronously, so it doesn't block what you're doing. And it seems like it was working where I just looked at it. But that's a fairly new feature, so if you have trouble with it, you should certainly let me know. And then this is the main page for how to get BibTeX entries from a DOI, or the main code. Basically, we send a request with some headers to get JSON data, and then we read that and turn it into a BibTeX entry using this expand template. And then this is the main function that does all of the work in generating the BibTeX entries. And it's always good to know that there are several functions for debugging this to try to figure out when it's not working. So here's the main one that I mentioned, DOI utils add BibTeX entry. I aliased this to something shorter, kind of for historical reasons. I wish I would have named it the shorter one, but I'm leaving it this way for now. And here's how we do some updating. This just updates a field by getting the data that it needs and then modifying it. So here we get the BibTeX entry from a DOI and update anything that's needed. And we can skip all of these. So I mostly want to get down to this one. How do we debug? So there's one function, DOI utils debug, and it takes a DOI and it will generate a buffer that shows you everything that's there. So let's look at that one real quick. Let's use this one. So this shows you what kind of JSON data we get back. So for this DOI, we get this. This is the raw JSON. It's not really JSON. It's already been interpreted by Emacs. So these are the parts, the funders. You know, these are all of these references that cited it. It's kind of interesting. So you get a lot of data, and if there's any trouble, this is the starting place to get back to it. Okay, so that's it for ORGraph and DOI utils. Maybe I'll have one more video that is like a more polished version, but of the whole thing, like with the overview and whatnot, to replace the 2015 video. But maybe I'll take a break and get back to some other topics like IV or completion or some other thing that I do in Cymax pretty often. All right, so that's it. Thanks for everybody who's been testing out ORGraph the last 10 days or so and letting me know about some problems. We found a few things here and there. I think there's some people still having some trouble with the compiled versions because of variables or functions that aren't declared in there, but I think those should all be fixed as far as I know today. And I appreciate all the help in debugging and checking what's going on. All right, thanks.